Good evening, everyone. This is Marius from CTGlobal. I will be the one presenting. We're still waiting a couple of minutes until we'll start. So hold on just another couple of minutes and we'll get this going, okay? Yeah, okay, so it's 4:30 here in Europe, and I'll guess we'll get this thing going. So yeah, my name is Marius Skovli, and I will be your host or presenter for this webinar. We're going to discuss modern management and give you some insights to why that is a good idea. First off, I just want to briefly give you an idea of who we are. So I represent a company called CTGlobal. We are currently positioned in Norway, Benelux, Denmark, US, and Estonia. We're a pretty passionate company focusing mainly on enterprise mobility and data center. Our vision is, excuse me, our vision is to become the leader in management technologies. Okay, it shifted automatically. Our vision is to become the leader within management technologies, and it goes back to why we're so passionate and focused on the areas we solely represent. This is a couple of typical customers that we represent. And can give you an idea of who we deliver to and what types of enterprises we can work for. So let's get right into the show right here, and we're going to discuss modern management and why it's a good idea, and maybe also address why modern in front of management, right? Because there's so many controversies out there about why modern right now. Why wasn't IT or modern management modern 20 years ago, right? So we want to highlight why we think that it's a good idea that modern is in front of management, because we do see a big shift within how we manage our devices, our identities, and our data in general. So let's get let's just get going right here. So basically, modern management is to balance productivity and security without making compromise. And if we go back to the history and take a look at it, it's always been hard for us because whenever we open up for high productivity, traditional wise, we've seen a tendency that security has taken the hit. And also the other way around. So if we harden our environment, make it really secure, tight, lots of group policies, giving the user barely minimum to move within their environment, we see that a tendency for productivity to go down. So modern management, in very general terms, and we're going to talk about a little bit about this the next 40 to 45 minutes, is about how can we balance this with giving users the best ways to work on any given device without compromising on security and or productivity, right? So that's the main objective, the main goal for this session right here. The agenda is to give you some insights to what modern management is, give you an idea and some knowledge of the benefits and how to get to a more modern state. So there are some things that you need to consider, and hopefully, even though this is a very, very big topic, this webinar will give you some insights to how you can move forward with implementing a modern management strategy within your own company. So basically, IT is under enormous pressure today, and we see this in various regions around the world, where employers says, "Give me tools that allow me to do my best work on any platform, whether it's in a browser or an iOS device or in the Windows 10 device that was given out by IT." But they in general, they want to be as productive as possible anywhere, and they want to enable productivity, but make sure that the company is protected. So and by company we mean mainly identity and the information that is created by our employees, right? And again, it's without giving internal processes a hard time, by having to do a lot of custom work and a lot of scripting, a lot of asking for higher budgets, and getting new employees and stuff like that. We want to have a focus on existing process and the skill set, but making sure that we're able to keep up with the new technology. So just to give you some idea on why we need to move towards modern management, other than just productivity, I guess. We see that 91% of cyber attacks and the resulting data breach begin with a spear phishing email, and we see that, for instance, with ransomware. About 80% of ransomware we get that through email as well, and within 5 minutes, 20% of our employees click on the email, which means if 10 user gets an email with ransomware, there's a good chance that 2 of those users will click on that email within 5 minutes. Now, with traditional IT, it's really hard, because that gives us a 5-minute window to find out which users are getting these emails. That's very hard to begin with, and then we need to remediate the emails, stop them from actually clicking on it. So with modern management, we want to address these challenges that we see in everyday life. Next up, just another example here. 45% of employees have accidentally shared emails containing bank details, personal information, confidential text, or an attachment with unattended recipients. And I guess we all kind of know what we're talking about right here. Many of us have done this on a more severe or less severe scale, of course. However, this is a fairly common scenario where you, for instance, send to the wrong recipient. You have 2 Rogers that you can send to in 2 different companies, and you accidentally send some sensitive information to a Roger within the wrong company, if that's a customer of yours, for instance. So also we want to kind of not put the responsibility, I guess would be the word, on the shoulders of the users, but we want to implement technology that can guide them into doing the right things, right? And this is also an interesting percentage right here. It's that 81% of hacking breaches leverage stolen and/or weak passwords. And we see this also a lot. One of the bigger ones last year during the fall was the Samsung virus, where it hackers just attacked, RDS servers that was publicly announced on the outer DM set, where they were, breached the RDS service on port 3389, and did that by having either stolen or just using weak passwords. And what it did was that it was subject to breaching the RDS service, getting to the service, dropping a payload, and then executing the malware from there, where it would specifically attack first, I think it was backup, and encrypt that, and then from there on out, it would just encrypt whatever it saw, and it's very difficult to when it's done to stop. And we need to make sure that we have functionality that can stop this or preventing this from happening. And also, if it happens, because it's hard to making 100% sure that we're unbreachable, but if it also happens, when it would be really hard, if it also happens, then we can remediate on a quick scale. So this is just a few examples to why we think that modern management is important, and I'm also coming back to why the modern is in management. A couple of other figures, and I'm not going through all of them, but I think the last one here is pretty significant, and it ties back to that we're having too many tools. 70% of security products with from 35 security vendors. That is the average for companies with an employee rate 1,000 and more. So this is probably one of the things we see a lot that is killing security. The average company, also with less than 1,000, just have too many tools and loses traction and focus, and having a hard time figuring out if things are going on, and if things are actually going on, how to remediate them, because they have too many places to see, too many places to focus, and maybe also it's hard to be an expert in 70 security products from 35 different vendors, right? So it's also about addressing the complexity, unnecessary complexity that we have in many of the traditional setups that we see around the world, and trying to get as few tools that can do many different types of operations at the same time, which is really important, right? And it comes down to this, right? That we want to have a best of breed point solution, where we can increase our security and productivity without doing anything to current staff or budget, or maybe limit it vastly, because at least I'm from Norway, and at least in Norway and many other different countries have been deploying these solutions to, we see that they maybe want to hire a couple of new persons within their IT staff. However, they don't want to increase it. They don't have the budgets to increase IT staff and buying all sorts of different licenses and stuff like that. So we want to target this challenges by not compromising on anything, right? So this is also super important. So management, what is modern management? Well, it's basically these 4 pillars, which is somewhat what Microsoft defines it, and we also see the reason for that. It's having a fairly simple and easy approach to deploying and managing the devices that the users are on, and we see a tendency where users have a lot more devices than the 1 or maybe 2 devices earlier. They have a computer back home. They want to access their mail from a web browser. They have their mobile phone, of course. They have maybe a tablet that they use occasionally, and of course they have their laptop from their employee. And we want to make sure that the device is easy to deploy and easy to manage. And if something breaks or we need to do a break fix on it, that the user itself or IT for that sake can recover into a healthy state very, very quickly. And it goes back to what the users have for expectations, right? So that is super important. Thinking about today's threat and also somewhat in the user's mind, we want to make sure that the devices that we actually have in our environment and the applications that are on top of it are always up to date, giving them firstly the most secure way of working, but also in some cases also there's feature and feature requests that needs to implemented. Security built in from a Microsoft perspective, and we are a Microsoft partner, so it's important for us to bring this forward. But from a security perspective, it's having a security focus where it's easy to view and remediate. And I'm coming back to the example I gave earlier about what if a user gets ransomware in their email? How long will it take until they click the attachment that is within the email and infects themselves and maybe others within the company? So we need to have strong focus on that and have an intelligent approach to security. And of course, lastly, proactive insights, where we don't want to have reactive insights. We want to have proactive insights where we can get the information about that user, for instance, when they are infected as quickly as possible, where we can remediate. But taking it a bit further than that, we want to harness the power of the cloud, giving us the ability to actually remediate that automatically for us until we can either open up and say, well, this wasn't any harmful stuff, continue to work, user, and or having the power of the cloud actually stopping the user and maybe also doing some type of remediation of the device. So tying everything back together, obviously we're talking about Microsoft Enterprise Mobility Plus Security whenever we talk about products, but Enterprise Mobility Plus Security is a great product or tool to actually help implement the necessary infrastructure in order to accomplish what I'm actually talking about here. So within Enterprise Mobility Plus Security, we have a couple of different main areas. We have identity and access management for securing and maintaining access and identity. We have mobile and app management in form of Intune. We have information protection, where we classify, protect, and making sure that the documents we actually produce are secure in a good manner. And then we have threat protection, which is the greater security features around malware protection and behavioral analytics and stuff like that. And it comes back down to these three main areas below here, is that we want to protect at the front door, making sure that if a person is accessing data, we know that we can trust that person by enforcing, for instance, multi-factor authentication, that the user is actually coming from a geographical location we trust, etc. We want to protect data anywhere, so the user wants access to their information they produce on both their mobile phone and Windows 10 device. However, we want to make sure that the data is protected and that it can't slip, through the cracks to someone malicious or a device that isn't protected. And then we want to detect and remediate attacks as we see them, as them coming along quickly. And I think that one of the most important parts about modern management is actually making sure that we are protected, we are safe. Security is probably the biggest and most important part of modern management, and is also the biggest driver for us thinking differently, right? So what is modern management and how we define it? Well, it's harnessing cloud power to do traditional and complex tasks that are traditional tasks that are complex and or impossible. For instance, with Microsoft Threat Protection, we can detect and remediate ransomware within seconds or even milliseconds. That would be impossible to do with traditional software. You can most certainly, in theory, build the technology and solutions yourself, having a development team and stuff like that. But Microsoft has put a tremendous amount of efforts and into creating a solution that we more simply can lease and integrate with the stuff we traditionally have our on-premise already, which we think is a more easier approach to modern management and getting started. And I'm coming back to that in a little second. So yeah, harness cloud power to do traditionally complex and or impossible tasks is how we define modern management, I guess. So, and we're coming back to why it is, well, it is to balance productivity and security without making any compromises. So I'm just going to quickly check if we have any questions. No, not yet, but that's good. So yeah, let's see if we can get going. To emphasize some of the things I've been talking to put it in a little perspective, I want to do some quick examples for you guys. And I thought that we can break it down firstly before we talk a little bit about Windows 10 and how that fits into modern management. Is to take a look at mobile application management, conditional access, and identity protection with behavior analytics, which are super important parts of making sure that data is protected, identity is protected. We protect at the front door, which I talked about earlier, and it's not that complicated to get going with when you have the enterprise mobility plus security suite or product within your license stack. So let me go quickly over to my demo environment right here. Just making that as a reference. So So as you can see, this is an iOS device. This is an iPad with iOS .2, I think, installed. So it has the latest operating system. And then I have my private area on this device. Netflix, Spotify, different applications that I use privately. However, I have an area that is very focused on work. This device, however, is not managed by my company yet. That is, And I just want to give you an example on how you can, leverage mobile application management very easily to secure some of the applications without interfering too much with the end user. So just think of this as a bring your own device, for instance, or a Cope device, company-owned, personally enabled, where you've been given the phone or iPad by your employee. It could also be an Android, by the way, but and it's considered personal in a way. However, its intent is also to make sure you're productive on the go, and that you can access, for instance, your email, Teams, your files in OneDrive, etc. So just to give you a quick example here is that if I click on Outlook, I've enabled a policy that says if you are accessing Outlook, you need to identify either with your Face ID, because this is an iOS, Touch ID, or a PIN code. And if I just, click on that, I will access my email. In the background, in addition to this, I've also enabled encryption for all the application data. And a little convenient thing is that if we go to the Intune console, because it's an Intune feature called App Protection, if we go to Client Apps, App Protection Policies, Properties, Data Protection, I've also blocked backup of organizational data to iTunes and iCloud, and the same goes for Google. So a great example would be what about the companies that traditionally say, well, we're not moving to the cloud. We have an on-premise environment, on-premise Exchange. We're not ready for Office 365 or whatever. Intune would still be applicable with, for instance, mobile application management, because they don't want users to back up their email data or app data to Apple or Google, for instance. So we want to block that. We will handle that data either if it's in Office 365 or in our on-premise environment. So this is a pretty neat feature, and as you can see from my demo, it's no MDM involved at all. The way it works is that when I'm accessing the application with my on-premise or Office 365 account, it contacts Intune, which says and states you have to make sure that you use a PIN code when accessing this, and in the background it will also making sure that the data attached or to that account will be encrypted. Now, to give you a little another example is that, let's say I'm accessing Teams, and company policy says when accessing Teams, not necessarily Outlook, Word, or Excel or PowerPoint, but accessing Teams, we want to make sure that the device is MDM enrolled and that we have some tougher security put onto that device. So when I'm, for instance, going into Teams with the same account, I will be prompted to enroll it, and that's conditional access kicking in. So mobile application management will say you have to use your fingerprint to access the device, but in addition to that, conditional access states if you're accessing Teams on an iOS device, we want to make sure that it's enrolled into company mobile device management, or MDM. So here you can see, keep your device secure. Your sign-in was successful, but an admin requires your device to be managed by Red Dog, which is a fictive company that we use for demo purposes, to access this resource. And this is a great I love this example, because this is a great way to show that we can mix and match a little. We can actually balance productivity and security without making any compromise. And this is very simple to start up with as well. It doesn't take a lot of infrastructure or integrations. All you need is, to sync your users, of course, up to the cloud and buy the enterprise mobility plus security license. So, and lastly, I want to show you, let's go back to the PowerPoint slide and just making sure that I'm covering everything. We have mobile application management. We have conditional access, require, MDM. And then lastly, I want to show identity protection with the behavior analytics. And this is a little more expensive than the regular E3 license that we have in EMS. This will require E5 because we will require Azure Active Directory P2. However, this is a pretty cool little feature. So I'm just going to do a quick little demo here where I have on my left side, I have a Tor browser which masks my identity. So I'm completely unknown. On the left side, or the right side, I have a regular Google Chrome browser, and I'm gonna log in with the same user, but it will give me a very different experience. So basically what you need to know is that the left side we don't trust, the right side we trust. So let's log into the right side first. Oops. So I'm logging into portal.office.com. I can now, open Outlook, OneDrive, Word. I can start being productive, and it didn't ask me for multi-factor authentication. It didn't, prompt for any additional security layer because I'm trusted. I'm coming from a source that it's naturally trusted from my administrator. However, when I'm doing the exact same operations on the left side with this same user, Ellen Ripley, and it's a little slower, this browser, so bear with me. Same mistake. You can see that right away, and just see how quickly that is, suspicious activity detected. So it basically says something suspicious is going on. We don't trust you. Please verify your identity. And how we're going to verify that is by enforcing two things actually in this case, because that's how the policy is set up. We want to make sure we use multi-factor authentication to making sure your identity is safe. However, we also want to make sure that your password gets reset. And if we go back to our portal.azure.com and go to identity protection, we can actually see and monitor these risk events from happening. And you can see we have sign in from an anonymous IP address, impossible travel, and sign-ins from unfamiliar locations. And in the middle here, I think this is one of the most interesting parts. This will prevent, a user from logging in Oslo or Stockholm or New York at the moment, and then suddenly logging in from Dubai or another place in the world after 2 hours, for instance. That will flag the event as suspicious, and the policy, which you design, of course, but in this case will prompt for MFA, and then a risk policy that will say you also need to reset your password. And utilizing these tools, we actually remediating without interfering. So we're just getting reports that this is happening around the world with different users. We don't go in and do any actions. We can do that as well. However, from an operational standpoint, this go back to we don't need that extra, budget for hiring. We don't need that extra budget for other tools and stuff like that. So yeah. I see that we have 11 minutes to go. I think we're right on schedule. Before we end this webinar, and I think we're going to give also a couple of minutes for questions, so I'm going to wrap this up a little now. But enterprise mobility plus security, it's important that we scale to all devices. And from a management perspective, don't just focus on Windows 10, which we in a traditional sense have done very much, with group policy, with config manager, with Active Directory and PKI enrichment, certs, Wi-Fi that's just for domain devices, etc. Data is accessed from any device. However, Windows 10 is probably one of the most important devices in many, many years to come, and I want to address that as well. So how do we move forward, implementing a modern approach for, our Windows environment and our Office environment? And this is basically a repo from Microsoft. So you need to change the idea, the approach from legacy devices to modern devices. Multiple devices, not necessarily that one a Windows 7 device. You need to migrate from Windows 7 to Windows 10, and the support deadline is coming up in January, I think, 24th or something like that. So you still have a year, but that is definitely something you need to do. Move away from Office to Office 365, and then the interesting part is that not moving necessarily away from Active Directory, Config Manager, and Windows Defender, which is now Microsoft Defender, by the way, but it's tying those together. So, Active Directory plus Azure Active Directory, Config Manager, and Microsoft Intune, and Microsoft Defender with Microsoft Threat Protection, where we create this hybrid environment. Because on-premise will still be around for many, many years to come, but this is definitely possible to do today, and it will give you, great value. It will get you going and get device-based conditional access, multi-factor authentication right away without, having to shift and move everything to the cloud, because that's sincerely not the case. You can do this step by step, and you can also have a hybrid environment for a long while. So how is the supporting paths to modern management? If you're a completely new company, cloud first should be the strategy. There may be cases that's not possible either, but definitely cloud first is the way to go. Then we have a couple of ones that we don't see too often. It's the big switch transition. We just move everything to the cloud. That is not without friction, and we see even a couple examples on that. What we see the most of is the group by group transition, where we do actually move parts of the organization. A great example on that is municipalities, where we in Europe move students, for instance, but teachers and the administration side and healthcare and stuff like that remain hybrid or on-premise in a traditional way. And then we have the iterative co-management, where we actually just shift workloads over as we see fit. And one of the most popular workloads that we move almost right away is that we set up first SSM together with Intune, is that we set compliance to Intune, where we actually can start with device-based conditional access. Just like I showed earlier, if we're accessing this application, you want to make sure that it's enrolled, where we actually can making sure that the device is healthy before you have access to the device, that is encrypted, that it is have firewall enabled, Windows Defender, ATP is enabled, signature updates is in place, and stuff like that. Transitioning to the modern management in a Windows environment. Today, we're maybe at a stage where some have adopted, the more modern approach with Windows 10, Office 365 more heavily, and slowly are moving away from WSUS to Windows Update for Business. They're looking at partially or maybe fully moving away from imaging to autopilot, and then we also have group policy to MDM. However, you will speed this up tremendously if you go for a co-managed solution where you actually take your Windows 10 environment, which is in the main, and attach it to and do an Azure AD join, in addition to making it co-managed with both Config Manager and Intune. And we actually have a couple of examples where we have companies moving away from group policy to MDM and getting significant increase in battery life and decrease in logon time during the conventional login. So that's a couple of positives right there. However, this isn't without friction, and you need to plan fairly well. But this is to give you an idea how you can go and what you need to think about. So modern management, it starts with a goal, getting to a state where it's easier to manage the threat from a security perspective, and it's greater than ever before. And also, the ever-increasing demand for being productive on any device, anytime, any location, without compromising on security, identity risks, and stuff like that. And it's all about getting, for instance, in enterprise mobility plus security, and harnessing the power of the cloud, which scales a lot better than we can do with traditional software, traditional on-premise solutions. However, with that said, we don't want to get rid of on-premise. We just want to integrate with the cloud and get the benefits that it has. CTGlobal has experience to help you on your journey. So if interested, if you want to, this was 45 minutes. I could talk 2 days in a row, 3 days in a row about this topic easily. So there's a lot more ground to cover. We just been looking at the tip of the iceberg to give you some idea on what we're actually talking about when it comes to modern management and why the modern is in management. But if you want to do a workshop, if you want any help, any advice, don't hesitate to contact. Contact information is down below. But we have experience, and we'd be glad to help you on your journey. So yeah, I think we have 4 minutes left. So if you have any questions, could be anything, also not related to modern management, of course. I'll be happy to answer any of it. Hold on, I think we got one right here. So yeah, the identity protection part support, I guess you can say support. So the question is, does identity protection support Windows 7 and Windows 8? And the answer would be yes, because it doesn't matter where you log on from. So it could be any device, actually. It could be from an iOS device or anything we don't trust. So it's behavioral analytics and artificial intelligence, machine learning, all that good stuff. Crunching in the cloud, looking at the behavior of the identity in real time, and as soon as EMS suspects that something wrong is going on, it will kick in the policies that the administrator has created. And in our case earlier was that we enforce multi-factor authentication, and we also want the user to reset their password to a new password. So was that clarifying? Hopefully, yeah, good. So any other questions before we round up? So yeah, my name is Marius Skovli. I'm from CTGlobal. Glad to have you on board the last 45 minutes. Hope you got something out of it. Enjoy the rest of your evening, morning, or night. And until next time, okay? Bye.